guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts. Welcome to my craft room. Before we get started, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for stopping by and visiting me today. Whether you've been hanging out with me and you've been here for several videos, or if this is your first video, welcome to my craft room. I'm a multi-crafter. I like to sew, I like to embroider, I like to knit. I'm getting ready to start making soap. I'm willing to try almost anything, at least once, to see if I like it. On Tuesdays, you'll find a Talk to Me Tuesday video where I just kind of talk about what crafting I have done for the past week and what I plan on doing for the next week. On Fridays, I like to upload a Sew With Me video where we make something, like what we're going to be doing today. And then randomly, you never know when you might get a surprise video anytime throughout the week. If this is something you think you might be interested, please go ahead and click the subscribe button. Or right over here, you just click on this little subscribe and it'll subscribe you to my channel. And that way, whenever I have a new video come up, you'll see it in your list on YouTube. If you'd like YouTube to let you know when there's a new video up, just go ahead and ring the bell right down here, below the subscribe button, down by the description box below. And anytime I put a new video up, YouTube will give you a notification. Subscribe button, or right over here, you just click on this little subscribe and it'll subscribe you to my channel. And that way, whenever I have a new video come up, you'll see it in your list on YouTube. If you'd like YouTube to let you know when there's a new video up, just go ahead and ring the bell right down here, below the subscribe button, down by the description box below. And anytime I put a new video up, YouTube will give you a notification. Okay, in one of my videos previously, I was doing a little hand embroidery, and I had my little triangular thread catcher garbage can sitting next to me, and this is where I was throwing all my threads. At least I believe it was an embroidery video, but whatever. And everyone had requested that I show them how I made it. Now, it had been a few years since I made this, so I had to go back and find the pattern because it was something that someone else had created. There will be a link down below in the description box, but I went to Primitive Gatherings, and in 2011 she put up a tutorial with this pattern. Now what this is this is a 60-degree triangle, and you can very easily make your own if you wanted to. For this one, what you would do is you would take a 10-inch strip of fabric and you would use your 60-degree line on your quilting ruler and you would cut out your triangle. But not everyone quilts and not everyone wants to go through that process. So she very kindly put this in a PDF for us and we can just print it out. Now after I printed mine out, I traced it onto a piece of this thin cardboard type material. Of course, as you can see, it's taped. I had to put two pieces together, but whatever, it works. I transferred all the little markings over because these are all important, so you want to make sure you transfer those over because you're going to be using them. Cut it all out, and then I was ready to go. So this is the only one that I actually finished. All the rest of these I got made to the point where you have to put the button on, and then I stopped. Because I had the one that I needed, I didn't need anymore, right? Eventually I will put buttons on these, and these will go into the shop. There'll be a link down below. Hopefully I will be getting them done this weekend. If there's one you see through the process today that you would really like, just leave a comment down below and I will save that one for you and get that listed in the shop right away. Little farm animals. This one has ladies. I have to be careful what they say because you can't use certain words on YouTube anymore. So, under clothing with lips. There's a doggy fire hydrant that we saw in the coin purses with some plaid. This has some wild animals, the forest friends, with this burnt orange. I I love this purple. What a sparkly purple on the inside. This one's just a pastel one with different colors. As you can see, I was just playing with a whole bunch of different fabrics and sticking them together. And this is one I made today just to practice it before I showed you guys how to do it. The pattern says to cut out two 10-inch squares of fabric. Basically what it needs to be is it needs to be at least a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch bigger all the way around. So I just cut a chunk of fabric. I laid this template down on top so I could see to make sure I had it the right size. And then I just chunked out a piece of fabric. It doesn't have to be exactly, as long as, like I said, you've got enough for a seam allowance all the way around. And I'll show you there's 2 different ways of doing this, but for now let's just go with this way. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take any type of writing utensil. I just have a regular pen. It doesn't really matter because you don't want to use like a big fat Sharpie magic marker that's going to possibly make a wide line and bleed through everywhere. But you're not going to see this line because we're doing it on the back of the fabric. We have both of our fabrics right sides together. Isn't this a fun print? Then I'm just going to trace around it. You want to be a little bit careful. You want your lines to stay kind of straight, and you want to have your basic shape because it will show up in the end if you're a little bit wonky, but you don't have to worry about being too perfect. Now you have a couple options. What the pattern suggests is that you take your rotary cutter and your ruler, and of course you would do it on your cutting mat, but I'm not going to actually cut it, I'm just going to show you. And you would line up your ruler on these lines and you would cut all of your lines, and then you would use scissors to cut the corners. And I've done that on several of these that I made. I did that on these skulls. I love how colorful these are. And the graffiti on the gray wall like that, I just really like that. So I cut all the way along on the lines. And if I could find my scissors in a mess, then you could pin this together if you'd like to hold it. You like my pretty pin cushion? I got that in a swap once. You can throw a couple pins in just to keep it in place for you if you're concerned, or you can do like I do and just hold it. Because you're only doing this little corner, you're not cutting the whole thing. And then just take your scissors and follow around that curve. Okay, and then you're going to do that on all 3 sides, all 3 points. Take my pins out before I stab myself. And you would end up with like this. Now, as I started making these like I do, and I make them in assembly line where I make more than just one at a time, if you're cutting out a 10-inch square, this is a 9.5 inch ruler. If you're cutting out a 10-inch square, you're going to have bits of waste that you're cutting off. Now, I just took all those chunks of bit of waste and I just stuck them over into my scrap fabric bin. Okay, after we have it cut out and we have all our corners and we have our straight lines cut out, this is an equilateral triangle, so it doesn't really matter which way you're doing it, except of course with this, I have my skulls, so I might want to take that in consideration, because when you start folding it down, let me see, when you start folding it down the inside to the outside, you can end up with upside down skulls. Now, that's not going to bother me, but I could put one this way, and before I cut the fabric out, I could have the other fabric this way so that when I pulled my corners down, the skulls wouldn't be upside down. But for me, I just won't worry about it, or I won't use 2 directional fabrics. So, but it's just a small amount that's going to be pulled back. So it's not like you're going to always see like an actual skull. It's just more of a feeling of it. So I'm going to leave it like that. When you cut it out, if you didn't already take... I'm sorry, I feel a little scattered today. The 2 marks you want to transfer You can do it after you cut it out like I am doing it right now, or you can do it before. But where the opening is, you want to transfer those two lines because this is where you're going to start sewing and this is where you're going to stop. Now if you didn't want to use the pen, you can just put pins in it. Then you wouldn't have to write on the fabric in that section at all. You just put 2 pins in and you know this is where you start and this is where you stop. And you're just going to stitch all the way around. For this one you could backstitch at the beginning and the end if you chose to. For this little project it's not that important. And you'd end up with this. See, I left my opening. This one I didn't backstitch, and this one I did. It's just a force of habit. It is just what you do. So this is the line that we traced our pattern around. And we sewed a 1/4 inch along the inside. Now sometimes it's a little difficult to stay and get your curves nice and even and to stay right on there. Look at my corner here. It's not perfectly round. It's got this little Now we're going to be able to, where's my guy? We can hide that with the button by putting the button down a little bit lower. But if you don't have a perfectly round area, it's going to be noticeable. It takes a little bit of practice to get it, but if you're just making it for you and you don't care, it's fine. If you're going to be making it for gifts, then you might want to try a different technique. Now let me show you what else we can do. You can take your whole sheet of fabric, your whole 10-inch square still, and here's my outline that I drew from my pattern. And then you can take this to the machine and try to stay a 1/4 inch inside here. You won't have that extra floppiness of the edge. You'll have this extra fabric to hold on to, and that might help you out. Now my corners are just a little bit better here. But what I found out works even better for me is I traced my design and then I sewed right on the line. So here I did backstitch, and I went off the line a little bit here, and that's not going to be that noticeable. But you can see my corners are even better than on any of them. So that's an option. So we get to this point, we figured out we've traced everything. We've stitched either around on the line or we stitched a 1/4 inch inside. Then the next thing to do will be to cut out the extra seam allowance. Once again, if you wanted to, you could put your ruler down and line it up as a 1/4 inch and then just chop off the extra. Or you can just take your scissors and it's on the inside of a garbage can. It's really a little thread catcher. It's not going to be that much of a crisis. You want to make sure you leave a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch and just cut around. When it comes to the opening section, I like to give myself just a little bit extra. Not too much. If you're doing 1/8, maybe go to a 1/4 and then just taper back down. It's just something I like to do on my openings. It gives you a better area to fold under the fabric, and you're not trying to fold under this little 1/8 inch. Now when it comes to the corners, you can use some pinking shears. You can use pinking shears that have the little zigzag scissors teeth on it. And what those will do is when you go around the corner, it's the same thing. Give yourself about a 1/4 inch down to 1/8 inch. Don't cut into the stitching line. When we turn this inside out, we want to have a nice smooth turn in the corner. We don't want it to be kind of boxy and jagged. And this gives the fabric a little bit more room to turn in the corner. If you don't have pinking shears, it's perfectly fine. You just take your scissors, and every 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, you just put a little slice into it, like this. Let me cut my corner down a little. Okay. So then you just take your scissors, and you want to get close to the line, but you don't want to slice into your stitching line. And just give it a little nip. It helps to have scissors with sharp points on it, because now you could go like this, but you have to be really careful, because if you're just stutter or you pull down a little bit too tight on the scissors, you will go past the stitching line. So it's really good to have something with tight, with really with really sharp points on the tips of them. So that's it. You're just going to do that on all 3 corners, which gives us the one that looks like this. Now I like to take this over to my iron, and I give it a good press on one side and a good press on the other, because what that does is that takes your stitches and it settles it into the fabric. So it's really, you can feel the difference when you're done sewing. Just run your finger over both sides of your seam. You can feel the lumpy bumpies from the stitching, but after you iron it, it'll take your thread and it'll just settle it right into the fabric, and it is a much smoother surface. When you're making quilt blocks, and if you don't iron your seam to set your seam like that, you could actually have an extra, they say like 1 or 2 thread widths, and when you pull it open, it'll make each block a different size. So it's just a good practice to do. Plus it takes out all the wrinkles and the poofiness, so when you're done. So you're going to do that. And the next thing you're going to do is, now we're going to turn this right sides out. They made the hole really small, but when we stitch it all together and we stitch up these sides, you're going to stitch the hole closed. So you don't want the hole to be too big. But if you have some hemostats or some tweezers, you can just put them in there, grab a hold of that corner, and just pull it out. It makes it a lot easier. If you don't have anything like this, you just try to get one finger in, and then my fingers on the inside and my thumbs, and I just push my thumb in there, and then I bring my thumb out the hole, and then you can pull it out. Be careful you're not tugging on it too hard. You don't want to rip that seam where you stitched around it, but you don't have to be too crazy gentle. And what are we going to use now, ladies and gentlemen? The plastic crochet hook. Bum, 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 bum. My best friend. We'll put them in there, and I'm going to pop out all my corners. Run it along here and try to get that as smooth as I can. If you're new here, the reason I like to use the plastic crochet hook is because it's got a nice rounded tip, but it's a little bit pointed up there. And I can run it along the inside of the seams, and it doesn't, I'm pulling pretty hard and it's not breaking through my seam there and causing a hole. Sometimes they say to use the eraser of a pencil, and that'll pop it out, but this spot's smaller than the eraser of the pencil. So you wouldn't actually get this point to come out very well. Some people recommend using the tip of their scissors, but I just got done telling you how sharp my scissors are, and that would definitely go through my fabric and make a hole. So then once again, I would take this over to my iron and give it a good press. I would make sure that I have my little pieces here and my hole folded in. And then I'm going to iron it really well. Now when you're making these, this actually is all from the same fabric, the same yardage. But as you can see, a lot of these, I use 2 different fabrics. So you would just have your 2 fabrics right sides facing. I decided, since I already know what it looks like when you use 2 different fabrics, I wanted to see how it looked with just one, and to see if I like that any better. And while this is really fun, I really kind of think I like using the same fabric. I'll be able to tell better when I make some up like this, where it's not all different fabric. You see how this is already set up like different quilt squares already. It's like a cheater fabric. So you want to decide which you want to be the inside and which you want to be outside. And then we're going to bring our pattern back over. Now what they say is to place your pattern piece down so you have your markings on it. Then you're going to take your piece you made and lay it on top. And they say to go ahead and take a mechanical pencil or some chalk or something, and to transfer your B's and your A's and your C marks. And when I was making the original ones, I did that. But then I was thinking this time, why would I want to put marks on my fabric and then have to worry about whether or not they came out when I can just use handy dandy pins? Now this one is the one that I'd cut it out on the line of this, as you can see, and then I stitched it so it's smaller than this pattern. Now if you do the one where you stitch right on the line, it's going to be about the same size as your pattern right here, so it'll be covering everything up and you won't be able to see it. But there's a real simple way around that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to transfer these 2 B marks, and we're going to do it using our pins. Now if it were the same size and we couldn't see it, it's real simple. You just slide it over a little bit. This isn't that precise of a project that you have to worry about it too much. So there's my B. So there's my B mark, and I'm just going to put a pin right there. And there's my other B, so I'm going to put another pin there. These are C's. It really doesn't matter what the letter is. It's just you're going to match the 2 C's up and the 2 B's up. You can call them whatever you want. This one could be strawberry shortcake, and that one could be blueberry pie. Your next step is going to be taking it to the sewing machine. I pinned it to my cardboard. And you're going to match points. Let's do in alphabetical order. You're going to match points A and A together. So what you do, see, now this is the one where the opening is. So as we stitch these together, we're going to close that opening right up because it's right here where my finger is. What I like to do is I like to hold the points together. Now you see how our pins didn't line up exactly? What the pattern suggests is if they don't line up exactly, then to just move one so that it does. Now you can measure from here to here and make sure you have it exact on all of them if that's very important to you, but I'm okay. I know, I complain about little things, but big things like this, I'm like, whatever. I know. It makes no sense. So you're going to take and you're going to stitch really close to the edge, like 1/8 of an inch, from your corner to your pins. Now I do back stitch here and there because this is a final seam and nobody's going to see it. So we've gone ahead and we've stitched this one. And then we take our next 2, open it up, take the next 2 and bring them together. If you want, if you have different colored pins, you could put a blue one and a blue one and a red one and a red one. That way you know which ones go where. Match the 2 up. Oh, we're lucky this time, they match. 1/8 of an inch top stitching from here to the pin. And then the final side, match the points up. Ooh, this one's way off. But as we know from stitching them, that it's going to be this lower one down here. So we'll just go ahead and stitch that one. So you end up with your shape. And it will look like this. So now if I put mine together, these 2, this one is 1 stitch longer than this one, which is not that big of a deal. And this one, oh, this one's 2 stitch longer than this one, or 2 stitches shorter, however you want to look at it. But it's okay because I'm going to show you how to make it so it works if these were a little bit off. So we stitched on all 3 of these, and we made ourselves this little like flower looking basket, right? Where's my finished guy? So now we're getting pretty close to looking like this. Now the pattern says to go ahead and iron your flaps down, and you can do that, but I was trying to, you have to kind of, and I don't know, and different ones get in the way, and it was getting hard to just iron it. So you know what I said? Psh, I don't need to iron this, right? It's perfectly fine. So what I figure is I have it like this. I will just take my clover clips. Now what I did like to do is I put these from point to point and put an iron, you know, gave a nice little press here so I had a line. And then I would take my tip and I would bring it almost to that line. It was about 1/8 of a quarter of an inch, whichever one you like. You can put it anywhere. I mean, you can have it up short like this. You obviously can't go any further and you don't want to go past the bottom. But I just picked what looked nice for me. And I put my little, clover clip in. And then I took my next side and I just eyeballed it and put it about the same spot. Popped another clip in. And the same thing here. Put it about there and put my clip in. And then that's as far as I got for today. Now the only thing left at this point is to go ahead and stitch your buttons on. See, I used this a light purple embroidery floss. It looks like I used 3 strands. You can use a sewing needle, whichever one you want. And very, very little couple stitches inside. So what I did is I folded this over. I took my needle and I went through my button all the way through and came back out through the second hole. And then I just tied a knot in it. Yep, I only did it once because this isn't a strength point. Nothing's going to be hanging from this. You're not going to be lifting flaps up and down and everything. It's purely to hold it open and it's decoration. These are the My Little Pony, My Pretty Pony, whatever it is nowadays. It was something back in the 80s and now it's different. I don't know. But you can see there's the outside stitch where he stitched it. Now I did learn through this process that you really kind of want to match your thread. I chose black fabric on purpose because you want to match. This one's not too bad. You can see the black. But since it's black and white fabric, it doesn't bother you that much. Like this one, it's purple fabric with the white thread. It bothers me a little bit. So I found a workaround to that also. If it bothers you, you can turn it inside out. Now this one, when I made it, as you'll see, this is where I stitched it. See how they fold? They just, the one corner just side goes in and it folds nice and flat. This has been sitting on a shelf in my room for a couple years. But anyways, you can see my stitches right there. You can see the stitch line. You can see where I back stitched a little bit because I was using a different setting on my machine. My machine, for a back stitch, it either goes back a couple stitches or it has one position where it just goes up and down and locks the thread. Now for my new ones, that's what I was using, just up and down and lock the thread. So you don't see, well, you see the little piece of thread that needs to be trimmed, but you don't see where I back stitched across the line at all. So that makes that one a lot neater to begin with already. But I wasn't too happy on some of these with the way the line looks. So what I did is you simply turn it around. Just turn it what they consider inside out and put the seams on the inside. Because really, when we make stuff anyways, we put the seams on the inside. You don't look at them on the outside, right? Just pop them through. Put your finger in the little corner down at the bottom. Take your little crochet hook. You're not going to really be able to pop it out because the seam is kind of thick. But you just move it around. You can give it a good press if you want. Then you just start folding your pieces down again. And this time, you're not going to see the edges at all. And really, when you look on the inside, they're way over here where the two sides are coming together. So you're not going to really notice that as much either. And when you do, you're going to see this finished edge. You're not going to see like raw edges. You're not going to see the stitching line or anything. So if you're not quite happy with the way your outsides look and you didn't get everything perfect, or your lines were a little crooked, or the thread didn't match, or whatever happens to be your situation, don't worry, there's an easy fix. Just turn it around inside out. It's kind of like a flower petals, is what I think of. So your 10-inch square, you have to excuse me, it's allergy season everywhere. Nothing different here down in Florida. So your 10-inch square has given you about a 4¼ inch on either side. And the total size, it's equilateral. It's an equilateral triangle. It's going to be 4¼ inches, however you look at it. So no matter how you spin it. So that's pretty good. So if you want to have something larger, then you can always start with a larger triangle. So if you like my little triangle thread catcher and you'd like to make one for yourself, go ahead and follow the link down below or Google Primitive Gatherings, and it's called the Triangle Thread Catcher. And she has a nice written tutorial, and now you have a video tutorial to go with it. If you'd like to purchase one of these, just give me a couple days and they will be in my Artfire shop. The link is always down below for them. And if there's any of these that you saw that you are interested in, just let me know. And I can set one aside for you and make a special listing just for you. Just pile them all in there. So that's it for me this week. I hope you guys have been having a great week. Hope you have an amazing weekend. Stay warm, stay safe, and we will see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.